In this section, we wanted to take you through some of the examples and kind of show you how to fill out the learning experiences plan. So we found from working with teachers in the past that there's some confusion and misunderstanding. So we just wanted to make sure that we're kind of all on the same page and we know how to look at the learning experiences plan and kind of how to fill it out to what we're looking for as a district. So to start with, this is what a blank template would look like. So you can see here, you're talking about what is your course, what is the unit, and then the different types of things that go on each of the learning experiences that we're planning. So in your folders in Google Team Drive, as you're developing curriculum, you'll just have one copy of this. And then what you'll need to do is you'll need to make a copy of this for each learning activity that you're developing. So if you're doing a unit and there are 5 learning targets, we should have 5 of these documents. And I do suggest labeling them as a lesson title. So it'd be like put a number 1 in front of it so it's organized in there. So if someone else ends up teaching this course, they're able to follow through with that process and know the order that they're to be taught in also. So if this one is light, I would put, you would just type in light in here, put 1, and then light. And then make sure you come up here and change the title up here. You can still leave the learning experiences plan if you want, or you can just go ahead and change this. So if this is going to be a unit, a lesson on light, you would just put 1 light. And then you just make a copy of this for each of the lessons that you're developing within that unit. And then this will help make the organization a little cleaner for it. All right, so now as we're moving on and looking at, so what I wanted to do, because there's some confusion with this last year, I just kind of want to make sure that we kind of understand everything. So what I did is I kind of went through and I put all these documents, all this information here to kind of explain what each of these things means. So when you're talking about your unit essential question, something that we've learned about, but I also put some more information in here on that. Materials, put a bulleted list of the materials that we use during this learning experience. If that is something that is electronic, we do want to have it hyperlinked. So if you have a worksheet, put the worksheet in this folder also, and then also put the hyperlink in there so that we have easy access to it. So if you're using a worksheet, handout, or PowerPoint, indicate the name or the title of the document and don't just put worksheet. So when someone goes back and looks at this and just says worksheet, they don't really know what that worksheet is. So if you have a title of that worksheet, that'll make it easier for us. And the other big one is referencing a textbook. Indicate the title of the book and the page numbers that will be used during this lesson, so that we know all the materials that are needed up front for this lesson. And then really just kind of going through, we know we're going to write out what the standard being addressed in this lesson is, what is the learning target, written as that I can statement, and then you're going through that anticipatory set or the motivation. How are you doing to introduce, what are you doing to introduce this lesson to the students? And I did kind of want to point out from working with some teachers in the past that what are you going to do to motivate the students or prepare the students for learning in this specific lesson? I'll kind of point out some examples and show you a little bit later. So this, your motivation, how you're introducing the lesson to the students, this is not something where you'd say, well, the students are going to turn in their homework. That might be something that they're doing at the beginning of the lesson, but that doesn't introduce the students to learning for the day. And so again, I'll show you some examples of that in a few minutes. And then when we get into the learning activities, go ahead and just list all the learning activities that you're going to be doing through the lesson. Again, here, if materials are being used, what are they? If referencing a book, list the title of the book and the page numbers. If you're talking about a worksheet or a handout, put the title of it there. And then if that is something that we have electronically, we want to have it hyperlinked in here as well. If you're having a discussion, go ahead and list some questions that you could ask in that discussion. Indicate the students are working in small groups, pairs, or individually. This is we really want to write this so that if someone who has never taught this before and they were to walk in and say, what is a curriculum, we'd be able to hand them this and they would really be able to follow this. And so that's why we want to have some of this information in there, so it's that guide to help get the teachers and move them to that next spot. With your closure, this is the wrap up to the lesson, how you're going to close out the lesson. Again, your closure to the lesson isn't turn in the work that we completed in class. So this could be a discussion question, summarizing what the students learned, or having the students provide a summary of what they learned during that lesson. And then, of course, you have your assessment. How are you going to assess the students? And if it's a worksheet that they're filling out or something in Schoology, go ahead and put a link in there. But if it could be something real informal that you're saying, hey, I just asked this question on a piece of paper, have the students answer this question. And that is fine. It doesn't have to be anything formal. And then if it's something that is possibly going to be graded, you might want to also include a rubric here so that others would know how you're assessing that. So now I'm just going to take you through a couple of different examples that teachers have developed. So like with this one, so you got the title up here, third grade science. This is a unit on light. And then the lesson title, Introduction to Light. They have their essential question. They have all the materials that are going to be needed for the lesson, especially when you're talking about those classes that you have to have materials gathered, especially in science class, before the lesson. This is a nice spot to really list everything that you're going to need, so as teachers are preparing for this, they know all the materials up front. So this one, you have learning target. They have 2 learning targets in here, and as we kind of talked about before, there should only be 1 learning target. A learning target is like our objective, as we've learned already through this training. And then so then they have, what are they doing to motivate and get the students ready? And then they're kind of going through and giving explanations of what they're doing, and then they have all that information in here to help guide the teacher through this process. And then at the end, discussion answers from Think Bubble number 2. So what they're going to do, they're just going to kind of go back and review that. That's that overview for the lesson. And then again, that informal assessment where they're actually looking at what the students wrote down here. Another example from your science, same type of concept, and you can see that they have different learning activities in here and explain this is how you're going to introduce it and those different types of things. So another example from freshman career seminar that we have here at the high school. So again, they have what the title of the course is, and then they have the unit. This really should be listing what the title of the unit is. And kind of going through, so you can see that, and again, it should only be 1 learning target. The next one will have, you'll see a little more detail on this process. So you're going in and you're breaking the students into groups, so they're kind of giving directions on what they should be doing for the teachers to help guide them through that lesson. And then what their closure is, and then getting into what the assessment piece is. And then again, they do have that hyperlink in there for that assessment piece. Okay, so this one, you have what your unit is, and then you have the title of your lesson, your essential question, all the materials that are listed that are used in that lesson, and then the learning target. As you see that 1 learning target, because your learning target is like your objective. So there's only 1 learning target per learning experience. And then what you're going to do to introduce and motivate the students for the lesson. And then this one, it's a discussion, so list it out what those discussion questions would be. So, and then it kind of takes you through and gives kind of directions for teachers on how to organize and teach this lesson. So just general directions, and then again you have the hyperlink in there, so it takes you to a video clip that you wanted the students to watch, and then here are the questions that you're going to ask after the students have watched that video clip, and then link to a resource that the students are using, and then discussion, that you're going to have with the students, and then just kind of taking you through that whole process. So you can see that this is really detailed and outlined so that someone coming in, they would be able to teach this lesson based on the information that's in front of them. And then they have their closure, and then you see that this one, with your formative assessment, it has what was the Sacco-Vanzetti case about justice or intolerance, and be sure to justify your response. So there's not a worksheet here, nothing that's real informal, but really just taking you through and saying, this is what I'm going to have to do. The students are just going to write this down real quick, and I'm going to look at it to see, did the students understand the concepts that I wanted them to learn in this lesson? So as you can see, some of the previous ones, they had multiple learning targets that were listed, and that is why we kind of want to go back and do one of these to show how to fill out a learning experience and how to do it correctly so it aligns with everything that we're doing with this Understanding by Design process. So, and that's one of the things that we'll kind of comment on as we go through the process. And lastly, I kind of wanted to show you this learning experiences plan review. So after all the learning experiences are completed, this is something that we kind of go through and just to kind of double check that we've hit all the components of this UBD process. So you're talking about, like we were talking about earlier with the learning targets, so learning targets included for each learning experience, written in an I can statement, student-friendly language, addressing standards. It has verbs that are measurable, so it's just kind of going through with this. It takes you through every portion of that learning experience so you can see those different things that are being looked for. And so this is something that when they're done, that we'll go through this in our office, and then we'll have a brief meeting, and you can see within this it's talking about, yep, it's there, or hey, there's something that's missing here. And then we'll also put kind of comments and it's like, hey, in Unit 3 I noticed this. And so then we'll just have a quick meeting, we'll kind of go through this together, and then at that point, if any revisions are recommended at that point, then you kind of go back and make some of those recommendations, and then we'll be done with learning experiences. So I do have all these documents below this video. They're all linked so that you can go in and you have access to them, because I know kind of going through, and you have it in the video here, but sometimes it's nice to be able to see it so that you can go back to it and look at examples and what that template is and those types of things.